In Canada, not all accounts are created equal in retirement. And I've seen it with a lot of our clients. They retire with accounts that they don't fully understand, and it could quietly cost them thousands in the long run. So in this video, I'll rank 5 key accounts seen on the screen here, from the most restrictive and tax heavy to the most flexible and tax efficient. And by the end, you should have a better idea of how to prioritize your withdrawals, avoid costly mistakes, and which accounts you should focus on building now before your retirement. So coming in at number 5 is the LIRA or LIF. A locked-in retirement account, also known as a LIRA, is similar to a RRSP in that your investments grow tax deferred while you're still working. First, let's take a look at the LIRA's tax efficiency, which I'll grade as a B. Now, a locked-in retirement account is similar to an RSP in that your investments grow tax deferred while you're still working. Now, you won't pay any taxes on the interest, dividends, or capital gains until you start withdrawing. Very similar to an RSP. However, every dollar you eventually take out is treated as taxable income, which can push you into a higher marginal tax bracket during retirement. Next is flexibility, which I graded it as a D. The biggest drawback is how restricted your access is to a LIRA. Once you retire, your LIRA must be converted into a life income fund or a LIF, and from then on, strict rules set both the minimum you must withdraw, and this is the key difference from an RSP, the maximum you're allowed each year. You can't skip withdrawals to save on taxes, and taking out a large lump sum is only possible if you meet strict unlocking conditions, like financial hardship or a small balance. And for most people, this means that you have far less control over your money compared to, say, an RSP. Now let's look at estate planning, which I graded it as a C. When you pass away, the remaining balance in your LIF is fully taxable income unless you have a spouse who can roll it over into their own registered account. And if you don't, the tax bill can be very high. In some provinces, the highest marginal tax rates are over 50%. So that will greatly reduce what's left for your beneficiaries. So if you left a job with a defined contribution pension, you probably ended up with a LIRA. It's a solid way to save for retirement, but very limiting once you need to start using the money. All right, for the next one, we have the registered pension plan. So I grade this one for the tax efficiency a B. Now, a registered pension plan is set up by your employer to help fund your retirement. Now, contributions and investment growth are tax deferred while you're still working, but in retirement, any payments you receive are fully taxable and added to your income, which can push you into a higher tax bracket and reduce benefits like old age security. So again, this is much like the RRSP. So for the flexibility, I gave it a D. So now it depends on the type of RPP. First, we had the defined benefit or DB plans, which offer fixed monthly income based on your salary and years of service. You don't control the investments or the timing. Payments start on a set schedule and continue for life. These are becoming much more rare these days. And what's much more common is, as mentioned in the previous LIRA one, is defined contribution plan, which show up more like an investment account. You can see your balance, and when you retire, you typically transfer it into a locked-in account like a LIRA or a LIF. But even then, your withdrawal options are limited by pension rules. Either way, RPPs aren't nearly as flexible as the next items on our list after this. So the reason I included this registered pension plan section, even though it contains, say, the defined contribution, which also includes the LIRA, is because I wanted to highlight the difference between the defined contribution and defined benefit. It's a very important distinction to make because they're very different accounts, even though they sound quite similar. For estate planning, I also give this a D. Now, RPPs generally offer little for your heirs, so in a defined benefit plan, payments often stop when you and your spouse pass away. In a defined contribution plan, there may be some value left, but it's usually locked in and must follow strict withdrawal rules. So RPPs are great, especially defined benefit pensions for predictable retirement income, but it does have some concerns over the flexibility and the estate value. So that's why it's important to build other sources of retirement income to keep your options wide open. And here's a pro tip, you may be able to split pension income with your spouse to reduce your overall tax bill. And this is one of the many strategies we help Canadians with at Blueprint Financials, so check out our services on our website. Now coming in at number 3 is non-registered investments. And this was a bit of a tricky list for me to make because it's kind of hard to place different accounts above one another. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is better than, say, a defined benefit pension plan or defined contribution, but it has certain aspects of it that are better, and I'll go over it here. So I actually gave the tax efficiency for this a C. I was struggling for maybe a D or an F, but let me explain. So you'll pay taxes every year on your interest, dividends, and any realized gains, but there are some clever ways to reduce your taxes even in a non-registered account. Things like eligible Canadian dividends get a really big dividend tax credit that a lot of people are not aware of. And that can sometimes reduce your tax for your dividends almost to zero for lower income retirees. So knowing what works in these non-registered accounts is crucial. Things like interest income, for example, is fully taxable, and capital gains are still at the 50% inclusion rate and are taxed when it's realized. So capital gains and Canadian dividends are the way to go in this account. So over decades though, this annual tax drag can significantly reduce growth compared to a registered account if you're not careful though. Flexibility though, I give it an A because you have total freedom. There's no age restrictions, there's no contribution limits, there's no mandatory withdrawals. You can decide exactly when and how much to take out, which can be helpful for managing income and taxes each year. So I do want to stress though that I'm not saying this is the order of the accounts that you should invest in. I'm just saying that there are certain aspects of this when I really sat down and analyzed it that I thought that a non-registered account could be more useful in a lot of ways in retirement dollar for dollar than say a LIRA or RPP. But in general, you should focus on those tax deferred or tax advantages accounts first before contributing to this. But a lot of the times people will max out their registered accounts and then have to contribute to this. So non-registered accounts are incredibly flexible and can work well for covering big expenses or generating income. And if you're careful with what you invest in it, it can be quite tax efficient too, which was the main point I wanted to convey here. Coming at number 2 is the RRSP and the RRIF. The tax efficiency, I gave it a B. So the RRSP is a cornerstone of Canadian retirement savings because it lets you defer taxes again while you're working. Every dollar you contribute reduces your taxable income in that year, helping you save on taxes up front. So very similar to the LIRA and the RPPs. Your investments then grow tax-free inside the RRSP. However, when you start withdrawing money in retirement, each withdrawal is fully taxable as income no matter what type of investment you hold inside. For flexibility, I gave it a C+. So before you turn 71, you can make withdrawals whenever you need to. So I gave it this grade because it's quite strict on taking out withdrawals a bit earlier because you will be hit with that withholding tax and you will be still taxed on every dollar and you're not able to recontribute after that. So you lose that room forever if you withdraw it earlier. And after you turn 71, you must convert your RSP into a RRIF. And from that point on, the government sets minimum annual withdrawals you must take, which means you lose some control over timing. You can always withdraw more, but never less. And that's the main difference between the earlier mentioned LIRAs, is you could withdraw as much as you want, which can be very helpful for income management or whatever strategies you might want to run in your later retirement years. For estate planning, I gave RSPs a C, and if you don't have a spouse or qualifying beneficiary, again, to roll your RSP or RRIF over to, the full value is considered income in your final tax return. And again, that often triggers a large tax bill. So careful planning is essential to minimize the impact. That being said, there are a lot of great strategies you could run with the RSP. For example, delaying your CPP by using your RSP withdrawals strategically so you can get more of that inflation-protected CPP money later on in life, which will protect against longevity risk. I go over that strategy in way more detail in this other video, so check that out. So a quick note about the FHSA. So if you opened a first home savings account and never bought a home, the balance is automatically rolled into your RSP. So in many cases, it becomes extra RSP money you'll eventually withdraw during retirement. I was thinking about adding the FHSA onto this list, but it would essentially be the exact same as the RSP because it eventually just rolls over into one. And if you want to save on taxes in retirement, check out our free guide on 5 of our proven strategies for Canadian retirees. You can grab a free copy. A link is in the description for our website. And coming at number 1 is the beloved TFSA or the tax-free savings account. For tax efficiency, I give it an A+. Every dollar you withdraw from your TFSA is completely tax-free, no matter how much your investments have grown. Whether you're taking out $1,000 or $100,000, it doesn't count as taxable income, so it won't affect government benefits like old age security or GIS. This makes it an incredibly powerful tool for retirement income planning. And as the limits get higher and higher for TFSAs, it won't be surprising to see in the future if more and more retirements are funded solely from this account. For flexibility, I also give it an A+, because a TFSA is unmatched in flexibility. You can access your money anytime for any reason with no penalties or mandatory withdrawals. And whether you need cash for a home repair, travel, or medical expenses, your TFSA is always available. For estate planning, it's also an A+, because when you pass away, it's very straightforward to leave your TFSA to your spouse or designated beneficiary. There are ways you could roll it over to your spouse tax-free, and by designating beneficiaries such as your children, they can often receive it, but there are some tax consequences to that, so make sure you research that before you do that. If you're looking for the most versatile and tax-efficient account to support your retirement, the TFSA is hands down the MVP. Because whether you're topping up monthly cash flow, covering big purchases, or simply building a cushion, it does everything with minimal hassle and maximum tax savings. Think of your TFSA as a Swiss Army knife in your retirement toolbox. It's ready for almost any job, from emergencies to big splurges without triggering taxes. Now let's bring it all together with an example. Meet Diane. Diane retired last year at 65 after working 35 years as a nurse. Like many Canadians, she was surprised by how complex it can be to turn savings into steady income. So she has a registered pension plan, or an RPP, is a defined benefit pension plan paying her $1,500 a month. It's her rock solid base that helps cover rent, groceries, and utilities. The payments are fully taxable, but she can't control how much and when they arrive. She also has a RRIF from converting her RSP. And to avoid a tax crunch later, Diane started withdrawing early with payments to help cover expenses while delaying her CPP and OAS to get higher payments later. Even so, she discovered that required minimum withdrawals can push her taxable income higher than expected. Fortunately though, Diane had built up a TFSA over the years, so when her car broke down, she used $15,000 from her TFSA tax-free, with no impact at all on her government benefits. She keeps some money in her non-registered account too. She likes the flexibility to be able to withdraw money at any time, though she's careful what she invests in it to minimize her taxes. Finally, Diane had a small LIF from an old employer pension, and she thought she could tap into it for a big trip, but she learned that there's a strict maximum withdrawal limit each year. As you can see, by combining all these accounts, her pension for essentials, RRIF withdrawals to bridge early retirement, TFSA for big expenses and emergencies, Diane has built a retirement income plan that feels stable, tax smart, and under control. And remember this golden rule: when in doubt of what to do, contribute to your TFSA, because it can never end up hurting you. Retirement income isn't just about stacking accounts, it's about knowing how they work together. The right strategy can save you thousands and make life feel simpler, and if you'd like help tailoring your plan, head over to Blueprint Financial, and if you found this useful, subscribe and give it a thumbs up. YouTube picked out another video for you that it thinks you'll like, so check it out next.